Hello, everyone. I have the huge pleasure to speak once again to my friend Andrij Dobriansky in New York City. He's a spokesman of the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, UCCA, and he's one of the most visible Ukrainian persons on American television. Also, he's regularly appearing on all Ukrainian television stations, but now he's once again more on this channel here, Talk for Ukraine. Huge pleasure. My name is Christoph Müller. I'm a musician and caricaturist based in Germany, and I'm making videos for supporting Ukraine here on YouTube. If you find this program informative, please don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, write your comments down in the comment section below. I promise to answer them all. So glad having you back on the channel. Hello, Andri.
Hello, wie geht's? Thank you for having me back.
Okay. Yeah, you speak German. I try also to say something Ukrainian. Jak вы сьогодні?
Perfect. Yes, exactly. Wie geht's, Yakti?
Jak
Yeah,
ty?
we've been saying that we're both working very hard. So I'm glad for the opportunity to reconnect, and I'm glad that there's enough interest in Ukraine and what's happening that I'm constantly busy with interviews. So
Yeah, you have been talking to two TV stations in America. Which ones have that been?
most regularly, I'm on News Nation, which is a national channel. NBC News has had me twice in the last month, again, which they haven't for a long time. So it's interesting when different outlets. I speak to Republican and Trump supporters on Newsmax,
Hmm.
and then it just rotates as it comes. Plenty of smaller channels, public television I do fairly regularly, whether that's PBS, NPR, various local stations as well. And I do try to do as much radio as possible. So local stations around the country will call me, and I'll speak for an hour somewhere. So
Wow, that never ends. Yeah, wow, that's also a lot of things to talk about, and I especially love talking to you, Andre, because you are a very special person to me. We are friends since 2014. We know each other since those days, the beginning of the invasion in Crimea, and um, and since then. I recognize you. I see you. You are an American citizen, but you are also Ukrainian. So you are a very interesting person on that topic, and you have a lot of knowledge, of course. And we have been to the United Nations, to the UN. So you also know the people there, the politicians. So this is really interesting. And I'm always amazed how openly you can speak. This is you are not a politician, you're a you are a politician, but you are not a politician, you're a spokesman. But so you have to be diplomatic, but you are really also very frank and open in your answers. That's what I like. That's what I like about many Ukrainians, by the way.
well,
So
I enjoy speaking on television and speaking with journalists, but my main practice, where I study the craft of speaking, is with everyday Americans. So I try to interact with as many of them, whether that's town halls, speaking on YouTube webinars, directly having a conversation, and that's the most important thing for this ongoing struggle is making sure that everyday people understand what's happening, not so much what they might miss the news, but I may have the chance to talk to them face to face.
yeah, so you know exactly. Yeah, you can be frank. So that's what I miss from some. That's what I often miss here in the German media and the German politics, that they don't speak really. You're laughing, but they have a way to speak without saying exactly what they think. You never know what they think, and so you don't know the direction where it goes. And this opens also the the doors for a lot of disinformation. But this should not be so much our topic today. I would love to speak to you about the recent events. What happened when Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, they spoke together to this large assembly of 800 admirals and generals on September 30th. I watched those speeches and saw the whole situation, and for me this was really weird. What was your impression on this event?
Yes, it was odd. First, we know it's unprecedented. Even George Washington never gathered all of his generals in one location, but certainly here the United States ordered all of our commands. That means the African command, the European command, the different locations around the world where we have our commands, which organized hundreds of people and thousands underneath them, soldiers and diplomats working for the behest of the United States government. And we've pulled all those senior leaders away from their command. There was not a general left over in reserve. And now the United States military isn't exactly like the Russian military, where they need to listen to the vozhd every time for a command. So obviously, our military wasn't left without being able to do things. However, it is interesting that you decided to pull everybody as if you were the manager of a Starbucks and say, I want all the employees in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Notably, many military observers said that this is something that a captain would do, which is what Pete Hegseth was, bring in his brigade or platoon and have a conversation with them. And frankly, the level of conversation was at the level of a captain, talking about morale, talking about what
Haircut.
haircuts, what soldiers should be doing. And he was speaking to, again, the leaders of the military that deal with strategic nuclear options. They run this military that is with the largest budget in the world, the most employees of any organization in the world. And he was talking to them as if they run a small gym and they should be worried about people's calories intake and what they look like, as opposed to understanding what they do. Also, not understanding what they do, he brought in admirals and generals who work on radically different projects to talk to them as if it's the same project. So, somebody who works on narco-terrorism is not the same as somebody who works on strategic nuclear concerns, which is different than somebody who's working on border patrol somewhere. There are radically different spheres of commands that the United States military has. And for some reason, he thought it was important to have a speech. It was learned that later on, President Trump was added to this in order to make it worthwhile for these people to come. I mean, they were going to come no matter what. They were given an order, but there was nothing serious in Pete Hegseth's remarks. And notably, it also happened on the day of the shutdown, which began that midnight. So all of these generals had to run to their planes to get back to their commands before the shutdown happened, and they would not be able to travel because of the cutback in military travel expenses.
Oh, the shutdown means also that they could not travel anymore.
Not for
So,
all of them. Some of them in the commands, they are exempted from that. But some of I mean, they came with their petty officers and the people who support them. So this would have been a very difficult task had they not been able to leave that day. And that all happened on that very same day.
well, that's crazy. Did you have any contact to any admirals or generals? And could you hear what they thought? Did you meet any one of those? Do you know one
No,
some?
no. I mean, again, this happened at Quantico. It was very odd because they were all they all traveled back to Washington, D.C., and then they had to be at an 8 a.m. was the public briefing. So they were there earlier than that, seemingly bussed in from different locations where they were staying at hotels. I'm located in New York. I wasn't involved in that per se. I was watching on television like everybody else, but I did check in with my military contacts afterwards, notably former military. I wouldn't want to, put anybody in danger who's currently serving. And it
Okay.
was the remarkably similar from the highest type of position down to the people who served in the National Guard, mostly confused. Obviously, if you were on the platoon level or the brigade level, you kind of appreciated the esprit de corps that the Pete Hegseth was talking about. But this had nothing to do with esprit de corps. This was for, again, strategic command officers, people who run Space Command. What is their interest in physical fitness or even combat operations, which Space Command does not do?
So yeah, so I mean that's the military side of this
Yeah.
day. It was Pete Hegseth, and then it was Donald Trump, President Trump, speaking to the generals also. And I admit I did not make it through the whole speech of Trump because I could not make it. I mean, it was really long and it was really twisted in the topics and so. But there were some really interesting things I noticed. Um, the most crazy thing was for me in the beginning of the speech when Trump already said to the generals, so if you don't like what I'm saying, feel free to leave the room. It's easy, but there goes your pension, there goes your rank. Funny, funny. So
Right.
everybody was laughing, not everybody, but I heard laughter in the room, and so I could
That was
not
the only,
believe.
that was the only time you heard laughter was at the very beginning of President Trump's speech. You did not hear a reaction at all during Pete
No,
Hegseth,
that's not true. I heard some more laughter. I heard some.
but not from the
Excuse me for.
not from the generals. There were some support staff for President Trump who were there. So we know that they were trying to encourage people to react because at the very beginning, he even remarked that he was told that these generals and admirals will not respond because, as they do for most major speeches, they want to seem non-political. And of course, this speech was highly political, highly delved on his attacks on the Democratic Party, the former president, and so therefore it made it very inappropriate for anybody to react to it.
Okay, okay. So thanks for correcting me because I thought really that were generals who laughed in the middle of some jokes. So
No.
that is good. But I thought really, what will happen? There must be some reaction of the generals. For example, the one of the most concerning things was that he said that the American cities will be the training ground for battles. And
Mhm.
so he will send the National Guard to Los Angeles, to Chicago, to Washington, D.C., and he's already done so, I guess. Portland.
Yes, he
Didn't
has begun. Well, the first time that was in Los Angeles. Uh, since that time, he has employed taking over the National Guards of different states, but not really sending additional military like he did when he sent the Marines to Los Angeles. But yes, and again, I point to who was in that room. Somebody did I think it was Elliot Cohen who did a quick calculation that based on the number of generals and admirals and when they would have started their military career, there was a combined 25,000 years of military experience that they were talking to.
Yeah.
Whereas President Trump and Pete Hegseth have very little such experience, especially on the command level, which is who the audience they were talking to. So when the president brings up deploying troops on American territory, it is that knowledge base of the generals and admirals who learn in war college, learn in their military studies about the inappropriateness of this, what the Constitution holds and precedent holds for deploying of troops. And, frankly, we're seeing things at the level that we haven't seen since before the Revolutionary War, when, say, the British would go through buildings and knock through doors and arrest everybody in an entire building. That is the kind of element that we're seeing today in these immigration raids that are not signed with warrants, that are not authorized by judges, which is the whole point of the Constitution. So again, this was an interesting opportunity for the generals to hear directly from the president. These aren't people who necessarily would attend a political speech. They would have never really watched his campaign. They were busy with other things to do across overseas specifically. And for them to see this, they might now begin to have questions about what exactly are they being ordered to do sometimes, given the fact that they heard that the president would like to see the United States be a training ground for the armed forces of the United States.
Yeah, that is very interesting. That is there must be some reaction among them now. They have to connect. This is really for me starting to, I think it is really becoming a dangerous situation in the United States. You're in the middle of that. But me as a German, I remember the history lessons of, I was not born yet. My mother, by the way, she was born exactly on this day, 30th of January, 1933. That was the day when, you might know this, when Adolf Hitler took power in Germany. 30th of January, 1933. Yeah, and there was an incident in Germany which is called der Reichstagsbrand. Have you
Yes,
about heard of that?
yes, yes, yes.
Reichstagsbrand. Yeah, the German Reichstag was all of a sudden burning.
Mhm.
Nobody knew who it was. They knew who it was, but they didn't know why he did that. This guy, and the Reichstag was in fire, and this was on I just checked it, the 27th, and in the night from 27th to 28th of February 1933. Reichstag was burning, and Adolf Hitler very quickly he said, "This is a coup of the communists, and we
Yes.
have to, yeah, and we have to make now our how to say Verfassung, our constitution, the constitution of the German democratic Weimar Republic was gone in this moment because Adolf Hitler, the new Reichskanzler, said this is no use. We have to fight the communists. And then it started up the beating on the streets. And that was the beginning of Adolf Hitler's dictatorship. And that what happens right now in America reminds me of that. That Donald Trump is.
Except that you're absolutely repeating what many commentators are looking at the Reichstag and the way Hitler took power. The very big difference, of course, being that 1930s Germany and the Weimar Republic is vastly different than the most powerful country in the world, which is by far the wealthiest country in the world, the safest country in the world. Meaning that nobody would invade this country. This was not the case for Germany.
Yeah.
In 1930s, and
Yeah.
if it weren't the Nazis getting rid of the communists, it's very well likely that the communists could have done something similar and gotten, because the extremes had gotten so polarized, because again, it wasn't a wealthy, the Weimar Republic wasn't good for the people of Germany. They were not profiting from it. Obviously, we know the repercussions from World
Yeah,
War
sure,
One.
sure. It's not.
Here,
It's not.
here, this
It's.
is not the same field. It's very
It,
odd that this is happening.
of course, it's not comparable. Of course, there's a lot of differences in this thing, but this scheme that a dictator starts with some threat from abroad, from outside, from inside, from wherever, he starts with some artificial threat which is not a real threat. And then he starts beating up the people. And I have the feeling that Donald Trump is trying to do something like that also. I
Well,
have such a feeling.
he has focused on immigration in this country, and oddly enough, when he began his campaign, many people remember that he was in his Trump Tower with his golden escalator, and the first thing he said was that complaining about illegal immigrants who are crossing the border. And that, oddly enough, was at the point where the illegal crossings were at the lowest they had been during the Obama administration. So he was back then absolutely making things up, the fact that we are under invasion, etc. It had come to be that since that time we had various changes in the political struggles of South America and Central America specifically. There were many, many more refugees since that time, and the political situation changed, that we started having to admit more people during under asylum, as is dictated by American law. But when he started this campaign, we had been at a low point. So like when you mentioned that whether it's 1930s Germany and trying to focus on an enemy within that you want to get rid of, here Trump was making up out of whole cloth this invasion until such time that it actually happened, and then he's capitalized it now with the increased number of people who are undocumented. But there's a very big story in that as well that we can talk about, who exactly is undocumented in this country.
What do you mean? Who is undocumented in this country? What?
This conversation began during this last election, and it started with J.D. Vance specifically. J.D. Vance represents a number of people who do not believe in the concept of different statuses for non-citizens in the United States. In their mind, they see people as citizens, and there's still a discrepancy on whether they will even offer birthright citizenship as per the Constitution. But there are citizens. Then there are lawful green card holders who receive a status as non-citizens to be here for a certain period of time. And then similarly, there are visa holders who also receive permission to be here under a period of time. Apart from those categories, and maybe you can add diplomats as well, but that's a special visa as well. Apart from those categories, they don't believe in any other kind of a residency in this country. That means asylum seekers who have under the law have the right to be in this country while pressing for asylum are considered illegal. They count those people as illegals. Also, we have temporary protected status, a status in this country that is offered to people whose country is unsafe, whose country don't exist at the moment because of political civil war, because of natural disasters like hurricanes or tornadoes. Many citizens from Caribbean countries, South and Central American countries, African countries, they have received temporary protected status, which means they will not be deported. But because, as I mentioned, they don't have citizenship, green card, or a visa, they are considered illegal in the minds of J.D. Vance and the command at the White House. And lastly, I will add a status called humanitarian parole that was began in the 1950s for Cuban refugees once Castro took over Cuba. This has been extended to many minorities around the world, not least of which I mentioned Cuban, Venezuelans, Ukrainians, 250,000 Ukrainians who came in after the 2022 full-fledged invasion. None of those people are considered legal in this country. And so when you hear the conversation from the White House about rounding up illegals, it includes all these people I mentioned who did not enter this country without that permission. And in fact, for the people with humanitarian parole, as you might know, it's a long and extensive process for people to get that status, applying for it if in the United States, being matched with a sponsor who needs to fill out forms for the federal government about how much money they have, how will this person survive in this country? Okay, we will give you permission, and then the federal government knows exactly where these people are, where they work, etc. And so these people are considered illegal in the minds of the White House, which is part of this ongoing situation, even with the shutdown, because these are the people that the Republicans in Congress do not want to extend emergency health care to. And so therefore, if something were to happen to these people, like say a woman named Irina Zarutska, who was killed in North Carolina, if that knife had not gone directly into the vein and missed something, and she would have been taken to the hospital, under this proposal for the shutdown, she would not have received any emergency care.
This is incredible. Wow. Okay.
It's a complicated situation that many people hear illegal, and it is made to make it seem very simple, but it's not very simple.
No, it's difficult, and being human is the key to everything. And the United States of America up to now have always been a very human country. Not towards everybody, of course. Black people, they have suffered a lot, and so. But since I can think, I know that the United States, they are a really good country. Since when was Martin Luther King's speech? 1968 or 8? Yeah.
And don't forget that this is the image that America projects around the world, and it is for this reason that people respect America, not because American soldiers go around with big guns in the mind of Hegseth or President Trump. We are respected and liked because of what we symbolize, which is the opportunities for people, economic opportunities, freedom opportunities, freedom from repression, from want, and this is fundamentally changing that image, as we are, I think, both in agreement. The image of the United States around the world will fundamentally change after this administration.
Yes, it began already before it, I guess, since the invasion in Iraq, which was based on lies, and that Saddam Hussein had nuclear power, or what I know, not nuclear, mass destruction weapons, which was not true, and so they invaded because of 9/11, and so that there the reputation of the United States of America began to deteriorate in my eyes.
Although I will say, in defense of George W. Bush, probably a president who has, through his campaign of PEPFAR and humanitarian aid specifically focused on HIV/AIDS prevention in Africa, he has probably led to more saving of lives than any other president in recent memory because of that. So it's, even with controversial policies of the United States in the past, and you mentioned Black people, the repression of LGBT rights in America, etc. Women who weren't given the rights for many things up until the end of the 20th century, and still many say to this day. Even with all of that, there was always a balance of the good and the bad. And it seems that what we are getting in this administration is more and more bad and less of the good, less and less of the foreign aid, less and less of America standing on principle, even to the extent of, you mentioned the United Nations at the beginning. The United States now has a policy of vetoing any resolution, not a law or a Security Council declaration, but any resolution at the General Assembly of the United Nations that includes sustainable development goals, which, as we all know, are very practical set of standards that have been used by many developing countries around the world to benefit their entire society, not simply focused on climate change, but a broad spectrum of goals that began when the United States took the lead in Brazil in the 1990s for the development of millennial goals. Once we hit the millennial goals, we've established superseding goals, eventually establishing the Sustainable Development Goals. And now, as of this administration, as of this year, the United States simply has a policy where we will veto any resolution. We will not sign on to any resolutions that contains the language of sustainable development throughout the world.
Okay. I was wondering if we also should talk about about Ukraine, of course, because because of course Donald Trump also should. It's always the topic about Donald Trump, and he made this big shift in his language and said all of a sudden that he would support Ukraine now, and that there is always those big rumors now that Tomahawk cruise missiles would be delivered. What's your opinion about that? You're smiling now.
Because I hear this question every day when I go on Ukrainian
Do you?
television.
Okay, sorry asking.
No. It's of the moment. And before then, it was always the sanctions. When are the new sanctions coming from the United States? I think that question has been replaced by Tomahawk. So let's talk about the change in policy. At the very beginning of this administration, I just did another conference that we run in the United States. We just had one 2 weekends ago, and some of the Ukrainian speakers that had flown in for that were remarking on how similar the Trump administration began their foreign policy, very similar to the Obama administration, which is something that I've been saying to my Republican friends. It's very interesting that you support Obama's foreign policy, that Ukraine is in the sphere of Russia, etc. But since the beginning, there has been a shift, and I like to say that we have slowly turned towards a more Biden policy for Ukraine, and hopefully we will eventually turn to even going past that, because we are very close to that, given the fact that we now have authorization by the United States to use American munitions on striking on Russian territory, which to this point had not happened during the Biden administration or any previous administration. So that's a good thing. We also have new material being delivered. Obviously, this is not being done with American taxpayer money now. Trump has demanded payment from Europe for these weapons, and that has come to pass. And we've already had 2 tranches of deliveries as of the middle of September and the beginning of October. Notably, that also includes a brand new munition called the ERAMS, ERAMS rocket, which is a cheaper alternative to the Taurus or the Shadowhawk, or the Scalp rocket that is fired from an airplane. The 10 of those experimental, meaning that they have just been launched this year as a new type of munition. 10 of them are to be delivered by the middle of this month, and then going forward, the United States is looking at a sum total of some 3,000 to 3,500 of these munitions going to Ukraine, and that would be their range is about half of a Tomahawk. Now, the problem with Tomahawks is, well, numerous. It's probably the same conversation we've had with the Abrams tanks, or then we had the conversation about Tauruses and or HIMARS, ATACMS, which
is still not there.
Yeah, I know. So everybody doesn't want to be the first one to give you anything. It always has to be another country to start, and then maybe we'll come and join later. But in terms of the conversation about giving something like a Tomahawk, We are up to the development in the United States and the active military use, as we just did in Iran, of the Tomahawk Block 5, so the 5th generation of Tomahawk. In actuality, I would not anticipate Ukraine achieving or receiving those kind of Tomahawks. It is probably more likely that they would get no later than a Block 3. And the Block 3 was most famous for its use in the 2003 war in Iraq. So that's when we had an enormous amount of them that we used. The Block 1 being used even in the first Iraq War in the 90s. So,
Hmm.
I anticipate if Ukraine does get this, and we are absolutely. I am more bullish, meaning I'm more anticipating Ukraine getting Tomahawks before President Trump enacts any new sanctions. So it's for Ukraine's purposes, that's good. And the reason why the Tomahawks would be good, especially, is because we have been spending so many munitions, whether it's Patriots, anti-aircraft batteries, etc., on defending Ukraine from drones, glide bombs, and missiles. And what the Tomahawk allows is to not waste any more money on protection and attack the sources. So we know that there are factories in Tatarstan and further locations in Russia that produce these drones, these Shaheds and otherwise. And the Tomahawk will change things. Well, now Ukraine can actually hit those factories and
Hmm.
prevent the production of that and change things back to where we were before 2025, when we weren't getting 500, 600, 800 drones a night.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds cool. But I heard that the Tomahawks, they can only be fired from submarines or from naval base, from ships, and not from the ground. And so will be submarines entering the Black Sea somehow and to fire the Tomahawks, or do they have also ground based systems now?
As with every system that was delivered to Ukraine, Ukraine finds a way. Ukraine
Yeah.
Ukraine has loaded U.S. munitions onto Soviet-made MiG fighters, which every single American general said it won't work. It won't work. Ukraine figured out a way. Ukraine takes any kind of technology it gets, breaks it down, figures out how it works, figures out how to make it better, and puts it into field. So the problem isn't what the specifications are. The problem is just get them to Ukraine first, and Ukraine will figure out how to fire them as best as possible.
That sounds good. Okay. Yeah. From you as a Ukrainian, I believe it 10 times more than from any other expert.
I have
That's
heard from American generals directly that they were shocked at what Ukraine does with the munitions we give them, and how all of them are like, we had no idea that this could be used like that. How did you figure that out? Well, necessity breeds invention. So
yeah, good. So this is another topic. When will we Europeans or we Western countries realize that Ukraine is not only somebody who always begs and asks for things? No, they are also able to give us things, and that they are also able to protect the free world from dictatorship of the Russians. But I wanted also. Um, I wanted to ask another thing. Just forgot what. Forgot.
well, I would add to your European question about, we just saw in Denmark as that military receiving training from Ukrainian drone operators about the next generation of war. It is already beginning with some countries understanding that they need to look to Ukraine for training. But
Hmm.
as to when will Europe understand what Ukraine is doing, I think they should understand what's happening on their own doorstep with the drones crossing into Polish airspace, Romanian airspace. We have the jets flying into Estonian airspace, and not a single one of these has been shot down
Hmm.
with Western munitions. We know that in that latest attack on Lviv last week, this past weekend, with the biggest
Horrible.
aerial attack on Lviv, that Poland was mobilized their airplanes up in the air just in case something were to happen. But we're talking about something very close to the Polish border. You know how close by car, by foot it is to get from Lviv to the border. And here we had Polish jets in the air, and they weren't shooting down anything.
And that is a point you mentioned, which is horrible, that the NATO countries, especially Poland or the others around, they are absolutely not seeing the Ukrainian airspace as a common one with the European one. This is a thing which is a real big sin. And here again, as a German, I feel very bad because our chancellors, especially now, well, not talk of Gerhard Schröder, but Angela Merkel, she was the one who prevented Ukraine from coming into NATO. That was
Yeah.
a, and yeah, this has to be discussed more, and this has to be addressed, and because if Ukraine would have been in NATO, then we wouldn't have those discussions. We wouldn't even have this war nowadays. So,
Well, let's not even talk about, I mean, NATO for sure, because NATO would be lucky to have Ukraine, but European membership today, there's no reason to keep delaying European Union membership. This should be something ingrained, and this is something that the Western allies can do very quickly.
yes,
This is
absolutely.
doesn't
Yeah,
depend on a conversation with Russia and some kind of
yeah,
compromise. This is
yeah,
something
yeah.
that's very easily done by Europe. But as far as NATO, and I mentioned what happened in Poland and Romania and otherwise, but now we have airports all over all over Europe, including München and Copenhagen, being
Well,
shut down because of drones.
yeah, where the Russian and nowadays they are discussing, are those drones coming from Russia or from China or from the Mars? I don't know. Yeah, we are discussing about those things instead of doing something.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
never understand. And we are discussing, and there is a lot of time going by, and the most cruel thing is that our governments are going to be changed due of the democracy. One country after the other is stumbling, and now it's in the moment it's France. They have a big crisis in the government, and the Front National, the Rassemblement National, they will they would have good chances to to make the president Bardella. He could become president if there would be elections now. So
Hmm.
this is dangerous. And we in Germany, we have the AfD, Alternative für Deutschland. And so we probably have only 2 or 3 more years. And if it goes bad, then our countries, the main Germany and France, the most powerful countries of the European Union, will be, and let's speak of England, Great
Yeah.
Britain. There's Nigel
The
Farage
Reform
from
Party
the,
they're very, if the election were today, they would receive the majority, not the absolute majority over 50%, but they would receive the majority of votes and would probably turn to one of the smaller parties to get that majority. So, but
yeah,
you're mentioning all the larger economies, France, Germany, and England. But in the meantime, almost every single border country of Ukraine has had elections where Russia has interfered. We know that in Moldova, that the pro-Russian candidate did not win, but Slovakia just had a, sorry, Czech Republic, Czechia just had
Czech
a,
Republic. Yeah, yeah.
which builds on Slovakia's change with Fico being in charge. We know
Hmm.
Orban's position. We know that there were two choices in Poland. None of them were specifically pro-Russian, but certainly the more pro-European Union candidate did not win there, and it's simply creating almost a ring around Ukraine
Hmm.
with all the countries that border it. That Russia wants to interfere with those countries, whether it's for energy distribution or blocking, perhaps in the future,
Hmm.
if Slovakia won't let, they're not doing this, but let's say Slovakia won't let American weapons go through there to Ukraine. Hungary won't let weapons go through Hungary into Ukraine. As the more countries slowly become pro-Russian and anti-Ukraine, the more Russia can cut off Ukraine from the West. And we, began this small section of the conversation by NATO membership and EU. This is why EU membership is very important right now, not after Ukraine gets
Right.
blocked off.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the time window is really getting closer and closer. And as you said, and oh well, my microphone. So so this is, how to change things quicker, because we are really slow. And I said already, we could, what from my, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need a democratic medial law of war. We have to, when there is war, there are special laws and special rules. And we are at war here. We don't still know it. We have
Yes.
to establish some war, some law of war. I don't know if you say this in English, but
Yeah.
that's what we
Yeah.
need.
Martial law. Yeah.
Martial law, and that's why that would, from my point of view, be the only possibility to change things quickly here in Germany and in France and in the rest of Europe, which is still really democratic and not pro-Russian. Because if you have all those pro-Russian parties here and the AfD, you can forget it. You never have any martial law. You have the Russian martial law, which is another thing.
Well,
I'm
and this is
speaking.
this is a question for the United States also, because uh, we know specifically that Russia interfered in the 2016 election, and there are many reports from the bipartisan Senate committee, from the intelligence community report, and
Absolutely.
all of them didn't focus primarily on the fact that Russia wanted Trump to win. Their primary goal that they stated for Russia was to divide the American people. And in that respect, they won that war. They have divided the American people. And subsequently, we experienced COVID. That was a war by a virus against the United States. But at the same time, three countries, Iran, China, and Russia, launched massive disinformation campaigns online, which I consider also to be a form of war on the populace. Um, uh, to discredit, to say, to false narratives that the United States created this virus, etc. But that was an act of war. But here, what I mentioned is 2016. This happened, and Donald Trump was elected, and so no majority of congressmen or Americans were ready to give him the power to do martial law. And then when you have 2020, that was when President Trump was also in control, and this three countries mount this enormous disinformation campaign while we are all in lockdown. That's also an act of war. But again, nobody would seem to give somebody like President Trump these martial laws too. So when you're talking about AfD or Le Pen, when we're talking about these radical parties, there's the balance of, we want the ability to do martial law because we know we need to swiftly react, but is the majority of the country, whichever country, comfortable with giving them to a radical faction like here, the MAGA in the United States, AfD, etc. So there's a balance that I don't think the world is ready for, and perhaps that benefits the enemy. I think they're happy that we can't figure out, as you said, that we are ready for war.
That's the point. Exactly. That's a paradoxon. We cannot put laws like that because we are democratic, and the other ones they can because they are brutal. They are
Right.
dictators. They can just take the stick and hit
Very swiftly.
instead of discussing, and that's why this is unfair and unjust. But from my point of view, this would be the only possibility, because we have in our society, in our constitution in Germany, for example, we have a lot of paragraphs where it is written that our democracy must be resilient and strong, and we have to fight if possible. We have to fight our enemies. It's written there. You just have to apply those things. I'm sure that things like that are also written in the American Constitution, I guess.
Well, to understand, I would bring this back before we started recording. We talked about how we were both on YouTube all the time, and the struggles to break through there. But when you mentioned that I'm on all these telecasts, and I said that I'm talking to regular Americans, that's because when we think of war, it is not just a soldier with a gun. There are various planes of battle, and one of the most interesting ones for us in our generation is the information war. And we are all, even though we are tired, doing many YouTube recordings or clips, or constantly trying to find new voices to put out to the world to convince people that it's important to fight against this information. This is part of the war. It's not just so when you say that the German Constitution talks about fighting the fight, it's not just a physical fight. It is a fight of ideas, and that's unfortunately always been the struggle for democracy. It's always one step forward, two steps back. Whether you're talking about the French Revolution and Napoleon, or
I mean,
yeah,
it's okay when you say one step forward, no, it's not okay. One step
it's not
forward,
okay
two
to go
step back.
back.
That's the other way around.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was I was thinking it's two steps in front, go forward, one
It
step back.
doesn't seem like that all the time. We always seem to be very harsh in the step backwards, like we have in the United States right now. In the United States, we fought the Civil War, and we emancipated the people of color, and then we had this period of time for less than 10 years called Reconstruction, where so many people of color were elected to Congress, and all of that disappeared. And the repression became 100 years of further oppression of people of color, even though they had full rights under the Constitution. And so this is what we need to be careful when we have these kind of swift changes. This is why incremental change is always better, because we don't like it. It's slower. You know, if you're talking about civil rights, it's not fair to people to wait for the change to come. But we also know that the slower the change comes, the more long lasting it will be, and it won't be quickly reversed.
Yeah. Okay, Andrij. So that I guess we will make a stop here now.
Sure.
And yeah, because it's
very philosophical
today. Absolutely. I'm not sure if we ever don't speak philosophical.
Yeah, well, we have to figure things out. So yeah,
it's yeah, but hopefully this our talk will bring some ideas to some people. I don't know, to the good direction that democracy can resist, and then democracy finally will prevail, and that we would not lose hope, and that that Ukraine will win, and that truth and democracy and justice will win. That's the point. And
it's very tough, but to get there, we might have to work with some governments that aren't exactly fully democratic. We know, you know, working with Turkey, working with you know, working
Hungary.
with Republicans right now. So Hungary also, yeah. This is, you know, they might not they might not share our democratic ideals, but just like the World War II, where we work with the Soviets, there was a bigger problem that needed to be addressed, and then at some point down the line, we'll have to deal with everything else.
I mean, which is really interesting about that you know, the governments of dictatorships.
Yeah.
So the dictators and their cronies, they are those who have the power, and they are lying about many things, and they are brutal. But the people, the ordinary people, they just want to live in peace, and they want to have whatever. They want to go to work and have their holidays. They want to live their lives, and they are usually not bad people. And so if people from Russia, for example, they make war against Ukraine, they don't do it because they are bad people. They do it because they are misinformed. So information is the most important thing, and to debunk the lies. And this is the topic I'm thinking about all the time, 24/7 somehow. And yeah,
it is our fight. We're not on the, we don't hold guns and we don't run into the battle, but this is our fight. And it takes as much dedication as, you know, a soldier going to war. I know that's you are probably as tired as I am sometimes, and we motivate ourselves. Let's do another interview. Let's find more people. Let's, you know, and I know it's not hard for you. It's very hard for you because you're doing this and you're doing your music teaching as well. It's not, there's not enough time to rest in the day. So
yeah, but I let me become a little bit more human again.
sure.
I think the key to everything is love. It's real love, and I give you an example of my cousin. It's a lady. She is 10 years older than I am, and she's from East Germany, and she's completely disinformed in this way. She is pro-Russian in a way, or not pro-Russian, but she thinks NATO is bad and Americans are guilty and the Ukrainians are bad. All those lies she has in her head. So usually I would fight with her, but somehow, because she's my cousin, and I don't know why, but there came sympathy, and now we're talking, and we don't talk about those topics because we know there is no point to talk about, but I can talk with her about everything else. And I hope that I can come through with love to her, and she feels the same to me. Just had this experience.
I work with the Democrats in elections here in New York. We're having elections, and I'm going to all events and stuff. But mostly, I am talking to Republicans now, people with very different opinions. Republicans who I end up talking with, and they end up agreeing with me on Ukraine. But on a lot of issues, we don't agree at all. But this is almost exclusively who I'm talking to now, because I want to connect with them, like you said, on a human level.
Yeah.
It's never going to nobody will win if we stand against each other in any society. We need to
Absolutely.
understand who people are, and I need to share my story. I need to hear their story, and I think in the end, I think the more conversations we have, the better we are, and that's the only way we're going to win is by relating to each other as humans and not making ourselves the enemy within, which is what President Trump said, the enemy within. We don't want that.
Okay. So anyway, Andre, that was so much talk again. So good. Thank you very much.
Very philosophical. Let's plan on talking again, maybe later this month, as we go for. I'm sure there's going to be developments by Tomahawks. The only big issue being the shutdown and how long it lasts. So, if the shutdown goes until the end of the month, then no matter what Trump says about Tomahawks, we're not getting Tomahawks until December because of the shutdown. So.
This is a very good idea you have, and by the end of the month, in fact, I'm going to talk to General Ben Hodges on 30th of October.
Yeah. Fantastic.
He's a fantastic man, and he is so clear-minded, and so maybe around this date or so we can talk together again about.
Let me make sure I will send to you a link to. I'm having a conference in Washington, and I have a Zoom option for people to send questions in. So I'll send you who the speakers are if it's of interest to you to ask a question during that. That'll be in October, and then in November, just announce another conference that I'm moderating will be about the 3 Cs initiative in Washington as well. And that'll have a Zoom option as well. So maybe you can just watch some segments of it. And maybe if there's somebody interesting speaking, I can pass along their contact information. But otherwise, if you want to send in a question by Zoom, you can do that as well.
This is a fantastic idea. Thank you very much. When is the date of this conference?
The one in October is October 23rd. And the one in November, I believe, is the 12th. Let me just look that up. That was just told to me this week, so I don't have that written down specifically, but I know that I was planning to travel. It's the 13th. In November 13th, but 23rd, I will send you right now all the information, the registration for Zoom and everything else, and who the speakers are. Okay.
Fantastic. And I will talk to our audience now. Please also write down your questions and comments in the comment section below.
Wonderful.
Yeah. If you have this idea, what should I ask on this Zoom conference? And then there will be probably come out some interesting questions.
Sure.
By the way, again, if you made it up to now, talk again to the audience. If you made it up to now in this program here, so you probably could give me also a like and subscribe also, because this is very important for my channel that it grows.